Have you ever found yourself reflecting on why a Pisces disappears from your life as if they never existed? As if, in the blink of an eye, it dissolved into a sea of mystery and became just a distant memory. If you've ever experienced this, you know that it's not just a matter of simple physical distance. For Pisceans, estrangement is a silent art, almost imperceptible, like the tides that gently recede without a clear warning. They leave no trace of harsh words or dramatic goodbyes. They just drift away, slowly, so that it feels more like a spiritual transition than a conventional breakup. What happens when they decide to move away goes beyond a simple desire for space. In fact, it is an intuitive and emotional strategy, almost like a need for inner preservation. If you've ever felt that quiet pain and emotional confusion of standing in front of someone who has disconnected in such an enigmatic way, then you're not alone. What I'm going to share with you next will change your perception of Piscean behavior and reveal the 5 behaviors they usually adopt when they decide to move away. Let's understand together what is behind this distancing and why it can be so disconcerting and at the same time so important for the internal harmony of Pisces. Repeat after me and write in the comments, "I respect the natural flow of life and accept what the universe offers me." Just like the tides, connections also have their cycles. Have you ever wondered why that Pisces person, who seemed so connected to your soul, just disappeared without a trace? As if it had never existed, as if it had dissolved into a sea of mystery. It wasn't just his imagination. Pisceans have an almost supernatural ability to disappear from someone's life, as if the water itself swallows them. Instead of harsh words or traumatic goodbyes, they slowly drift away, like the tides that recede without warning. If you've ever felt lost in a cycle of emotional confusion when dealing with a Pisces, know that you're not alone. What I'm going to share today has never been revealed in this way. Let's explore what Pisces' quiet behavior looks like when they decide to walk away from someone, and why it can be so disconcerting and painful. This is not just an emotional withdrawal, it is an almost spiritual decision, driven by an intuitive perception of things. There is no point of return, because for the Pisces, once you disconnect, you have already built a new world in your mind, and you are no longer part of it. Let's understand this better and understand the 5 behaviors that Pisceans usually adopt when they decide to distance themselves. Get ready, because what you will learn next will change your perception of Pisceans definitively. Pisces is a sign full of nuances and complexity. It is not only the last sign of the Zodiac, but also the most mysterious, carrying within it the wisdom of the 11 signs that precede it. People with this sign have an incredible ability to capture the energies and emotions around them. They not only feel deeply, but are able to understand and sometimes absorb the emotions of those who are close. This makes them intuitive and empathetic, but also vulnerable. When a Pisces comes into someone's life, it's as if they really connect with that person's essence. They immerse themselves in what you feel, what you desire, your fears and dreams. They understand everything on a deep level, and because of this, the connection seems to be magical and unique. However, this same ability to connect deeply can also be the reason for your need to move away. To maintain their own peace, a Pisces constantly needs emotional space, as the emotions of others can be overwhelming. This sensitivity is both a blessing and a curse. While they bring a lot of empathy and understanding, they also run the risk of getting lost in a sea of feelings that don't belong to them. When the emotional connection is no longer flowing harmoniously, the Pisces feels that they need to preserve their balance. And it is at this point that the distancing begins to happen, often silently and almost imperceptibly. Now let's talk about one of the most impressive traits of Pisces, their ability to quietly walk away. When a Pisces decides that something has come to an end, they simply begin to disappear, without you noticing the exact moment when the tide turned. There are no major confrontations, no dramatic statements. They just start to pull away from you emotionally, as if they're swimming away without making a sound. This withdrawal is not just an emotional decision, it is almost like a defensive strategy. Pisces do not deal well with direct confrontations or situations that cause emotional discomfort. Instead of facing things openly and honestly, they prefer to walk away in a way that others don't notice. This process happens gradually, and sometimes it's so subtle that the other person doesn't notice it until it's too late. The Pisces begins to create an invisible emotional distance. You can still see the person physically, but there is something that is no longer there. The words exchanged begin to lose their meaning. The moments shared lose their depth. This occurs in small doses, like a tide receding bit by bit, until the connection between you simply disappears. In the end, when Pisces decides to walk away, it's as if they've built a new world in their mind, without you. They may even continue to be physically present, but emotionally, they are no longer by your side. This is what makes Piscean withdrawal so difficult to deal with. It occurs silently, almost imperceptibly, but with absolute clarity in the heart of the Pisces. When a Pisces decides to walk away, the meaning behind this action goes beyond the simple desire to be alone. For them, emotional disconnection is an almost spiritual issue. It is a need to preserve your own internal balance and maintain your emotional peace. The decision to walk away is not made impulsively or superficially. It is actually a much deeper process, one that involves an intuitive and emotional assessment of what the connection with the other person is becoming. Throughout this process, Pisceans begin to feel that they are being overwhelmed emotionally and spiritually. The energy that was previously shared in the relationship begins to become dense, and the Pisces feels that it is necessary to move away so as not to be consumed by this energy. They have the ability to feel changes in relationships before the other person notices it, and when this happens, their first reaction is to distance themselves, often without the other noticing. This withdrawal is not a reaction to pain or conflict, but an attempt to preserve something deeper, something that is essential for the Pisces, their inner harmony. When they move away, they do not do so out of malice or spite. They simply recognize that they cannot continue in a connection that is no longer aligned with their emotional and spiritual state. Therefore, by understanding this process, you can begin to realize that when a Pisces distances themselves, it is not because they do not care, but rather because they are protecting and preserving themselves on a deeper level than you can see. Pisces is a sign of unique complexity, as it carries within itself a duality that few can fully understand. They inhabit two worlds at the same time, the material and the spiritual. This balance between the two is what makes the nature of Pisces so enigmatic and often difficult to understand. In the material world, Pisces is completely involved with the emotions of others. They are the empaths of the Zodiac, able to sense what others are going through, and they often take those feelings as their own. This creates a deep and genuine connection, but it also makes them vulnerable. They can easily get lost in other people's feelings, diluting their own emotional identity. However, at the same time, they have a very strong connection with the spirit world. This is a space where you can retreat to find solace and strength. When a Pisces feels overwhelmed by material life, they turn to this invisible and intangible world where they can reconnect with their true essence. It is in this space that they regenerate and find the clarity they need to deal with the complexities of life. This duality is also reflected in their relationships. Pisceans have a huge ability to connect, but at the same time, there are times when they need space to get back to their inner world. This can be disconcerting to those around you, as suddenly the Pisces presence becomes more distant and inaccessible. Understanding this duality helps to better understand Pisces' seemingly contradictory behaviors and can bring more empathy when dealing with them in moments of distance. When a Pisces comes into someone's life, they do more than just interact. It immerses itself in that person's emotional world, absorbing their emotions like a sponge. This is a remarkable ability that Pisceans possess. The ability to connect with the deepest, most hidden feelings of those around them. They don't just observe emotions, they experience them as if they were their own. This extreme sensitivity is both a gift and a curse. When everything goes well and emotions are positive, Pisces feels fulfilled and connected in an intense and genuine way. However, when things start to change and the relationship becomes strained or difficult, the emotional overload can be overwhelming. And it is at this point that the need for distancing becomes evident. Pisceans need this deep connection to feel alive and complete, but at the same time, this ability to absorb the emotions of others can be exhausting. One moment, the Pisces may be completely immersed in someone else's emotional universe, and the next, they may need to withdraw to avoid being consumed by these feelings. Therefore, when a Pisces begins to move away, it can be a form of self-preservation. They withdraw to protect their own emotional sanity, especially when they feel that the relationship is becoming emotionally unbalanced or draining. Understanding this dynamic can help ease the pain of a sudden withdrawal, as it is an internal need for protection and recovery. When a Pisces begins to move away, the process does not occur abruptly. Instead of a sudden cut, there are subtle signs that begin to appear, and it is important to pay attention to these details. The first, most evident sign is what we can call ghost presence. A Pisces, who is always available for conversations and emotional moments, begins to distance themselves without any explanation. The answers become longer, shorter, and often empty of emotion. It's almost as if the Pisces is physically present but emotionally absent. They're still there, but there's something about the interactions that feels disconnected, like they're in a distant place, far away from the conversation, yet they still respond. This change happens slowly, so that if you are not mindful, you may not notice the withdrawal until it is already too late. Another characteristic of this initial withdrawal is the decrease in emotional involvement. The Pisces, who previously shared their own feelings and offered emotional support, begins to close down. The person who once seemed to genuinely care about you starts to seem more distant, as if they're protecting something inside themselves. This behavior can be disconcerting, as it is very different from the emotional openness you were used to. These early signs of distance can be difficult to identify, as they are so subtle. However, for those who know the energy of Pisces well, it is possible to notice that something has changed. The Pisces begins to withdraw emotionally long before taking any concrete action. When you notice these small changes, it can be a clear indication that something is changing within the relationship. When a Pisces begins to pull away, the change in emotional behavior can be surprising. The inversion of the reflecting pool is what many experience when a Pisces' emotions begin to reflect the exact opposite of what you are feeling. If you express sadness, Pisces may respond with seemingly forced or even irritating joy. If you share your concerns, the response may be indifference disguised as excessive optimism. This inversion occurs because the Pisces is no longer in emotional tune with the other person. The connection that once existed between the emotions of both begins to disintegrate, creating a space where the behavior of the Pisces is the opposite reflection of what you would expect. They may be trying to smooth over the situation, trying to distance themselves emotionally without confronting or making an abrupt separation. This emotional inversion is a defense mechanism, a way to create distance without causing a direct shock. The most disconcerting thing about this is that you may feel even more confused, as if you can't find common ground with the Pisces. Where once there was a deep emotional attunement, now there is only a wall of answers that seem out of place. This is a result of the Pisces' need for emotional protection, who feels the emotional disconnection but does not want to face it aggressively. He simply begins to distance himself in a way that seems, to those on the outside, a radical and even meaningless change. The result of this is a gradual distancing, where in place of empathy and connection, an emotional distance arises that is almost palpable. For those on the other side, this can be painful, as the relationship seems to disintegrate before your eyes without a clear explanation. The migration of shared dreams is one of the clearest signs that a Pisces is already moving away emotionally. Before, plans for the future were a joint construction, a shared vision of where the relationship was going. When a Pisces begins to move away, these dreams cease to be ours and become just his or hers. The person who once imagined a future together now begins to talk about his future life without including the other party. This distance is reflected not only in the words, but in the actions of the Pisces. Travel plans, achievements, and even long-term projects begin to be shared in a way that excludes the presence of the other. When asked about the future, the Pisces' answer may be vague or even explicit in their exclusion of the other from the vision of the future. What was once a partnership now becomes a monologue about the dreams of the Pisces alone. This change can be devastating because it represents the breaking of the illusion that the relationship is still a priority for Pisces. When you notice that shared dreams are gradually being erased from the Piscean mind, it is a clear sign that the estrangement has already been completed in your mind. In many cases, the Pisces is already living a reality without you, long before he realizes that the relationship is over for him. This is the point where emotional withdrawal reaches its most painful form. For those in the relationship, this can seem like a slow and silent death, where there are no confrontations, but a continuous withdrawal of affection, attention, and commitment. When a Pisces begins to distance themselves, there is a subtle but impactful change in how they distribute their emotional energy. Something that was previously directed to the relationship begins to be channeled to other people, often without you realizing it. The Pisces, who were once emotionally present, now seems to direct their compassion and empathy towards those you don't recognize, such as distant friends or even strangers. The energy you used to receive is now donated to others, and this can be one of the most confusing parts of drifting away. This emotional redistribution can be disconcerting because it is not a direct reaction of rejection, but rather a gradual and silent withdrawal. The Pisces is not being cruel, nor is he trying to hurt. Rather, they are trying to protect themselves by moving the emotional energy to a place where they don't feel the pressure of the previous emotional connection. This is a way to avoid excessive emotional exhaustion and create the necessary distance to deal with what is happening inside them. For the observer, this can be seen as an act of disloyalty or even coldness. The Pisces, however, sees this as a way to preserve their own emotional health. They need this redistribution of energy so as not to feel overwhelmed by the emotional burden of the relationship that is falling apart. When you notice that Pisces is directing their compassion towards others, know that this is a way of coping with the inner change that is taking place. and it is often a clear sign that emotional separation has already begun. One of the most definitive actions of a Pisces when moving away is what we call the ritual of the separated waters. This is the point where Pisces begins to create a new reality, a parallel life where you are no longer apart. The Pisces, in their search for emotional balance, begins to cultivate new experiences, new relationships, and new routines that do not include you. These new aspects of your life are not only different, but often arise without you even knowing that they are being formed. These new interests can be as unexpected as a newfound hobby or new friendships that mysteriously arise. To those who are observing, it may seem that the Pisces is acting without explanation, creating an alternative world where the presence of the other simply no longer exists. This process can be particularly painful because Pisces not only withdraws emotionally, but begins to invest in new connections that are often kept secret. The most surprising thing about this ritual is the naturalness with which the Pisces transitions to this new reality. There is no dramatization, nor the need to explain what is happening. The Pisces simply begins to create a new path, as if he were following the flow of a river that goes naturally to new horizons without resistance. This can be disconcerting to those who stay, as it seems that the Pisces life goes on without you, and you are left behind without any clear understanding of what has occurred. This ritual of separation is often silent, but extremely powerful. By creating a new life without you, Pisces has already completed most of the emotional detachment process. For them, this is a way to move forward without making painful confrontations or dramas. The emotional transition of a Pisces when moving away is one of the most difficult aspects to understand. When a Pisces disconnects from someone, it is not just a change in feelings, but a deep inner transformation. This process is marked by a gradual distancing, where the Pisces, at their core, prepares to move on without you. Unlike other signs which can cut abruptly, Pisces goes through a series of emotional stages that culminate in an almost imperceptible but extremely effective withdrawal. What often happens is that the Pisces begins to pull away while still maintaining a facade of normalcy. They continue to interact in a polite manner, but there is a difference in emotional tone, as if they are operating on a different frequency. This emotional change occurs almost instinctively as a form of self-protection. Pisces knows they can't continue the relationship without feeling internally disconnected, so they begin to prepare for emotional separation, often long before they realize that the other person has already noticed. A Pisces emotional transition also involves introspection that can be difficult to detect. They don't share their feelings easily, and what may seem like a sudden change for each other was actually a process of reflection and internal evaluation that had been going on for some time. This transition is a form of adaptation, where the Pisces adjusts to the idea of moving on without the other person, often finding peace in this new emotional state. Understanding this transition can help ease the pain of withdrawal. It is not about rejection, but an emotional process that Pisces goes through to protect themselves and find balance. Identifying the signs that a Pisces is pulling away can be challenging, particularly since that pulling away is so gradual and discreet. The first signs may seem like small changes in your behavior, but they are enough to alert those who are attentive. One of the first signs is the change in communication. If before the Pisces was someone who was emotionally involved, shared thoughts and feelings, now you begin to realize that the answers are shorter, impersonal, and sometimes even evasive. Another subtle change is the decrease in time together. While Pisces may still be physically present, you notice that shared time becomes more superficial. There are no longer those deep conversations or moments of mutual vulnerability. The Pisces begins to distance themselves not only physically, but emotionally. They start to get involved in new activities and social circles while you feel like you're being left out. In addition, it is possible to notice that Pisces begins to take more refuge in their own world, something that is natural for them. They focus more on their personal interests, may begin to withdraw from situations that demand too much of their emotional energy, or simply become more introspective. When this distancing begins, what once seemed like a true connection turns into a relationship that seems to come and go, but that no longer has the same emotional consistency as before. These signs of withdrawal, while subtle, are key to recognizing that something is changing. If you notice these small changes, it can be a clear indication that the Pisces is starting to withdraw emotionally, even before a formal breakup occurs. Dealing with being estranged from a Pisces can be a confusing and emotionally challenging experience. However, understanding Pisces' behavior can help soften the impact and offer a way to deal with the situation in a healthier way. The first step is to accept that the nature of Pisces is emotional and often guided by intuition, which makes direct and confrontational communication difficult for them. Therefore, when perceiving the distance, the immediate reaction should not be confrontational, but understanding. An effective approach is to give space. Instead of pressuring Pisces for answers or clarification, allow them to step away at their own pace. This may seem counterintuitive, but Pisceans need space to process their emotions without the pressure of having to explain everything. External pressure can increase the feeling of emotional suffocation for them, causing the distance to intensify even more. In addition, it is important to focus on your own emotional balance during this period. The withdrawal of a Pisces can leave the other person with a great emptiness, but it is essential not to lose one's own identity and inner peace. Maintaining emotional clarity can be a way to make sure that the situation does not drag on longer than necessary. If the relationship still has a solid foundation, a moment of open and honest conversation can be valuable. However, when dealing with Pisces, it is important that this dialogue is kind and empathetic, allowing the Pisces to feel comfortable enough to open their heart if they wish. Respecting their process can be the key to helping both of you find a dignified and respectful closure. The relationship with a Pisces can be as fluid and changeable as the tides. When you finally understand the nature of these connections, it becomes easier to accept that, just like all things in the universe, relationships also have their natural ebbs and flows. The Pisces does not see the end of a relationship as a failure, but as a part of the cycle of life, a transformation that occurs in a silent and often unexpected way. Accepting the natural flow of connections with Pisces means understanding that love, like water, can be deep, mysterious, and in many cases, difficult to hold. They love intensely, but when the end comes, they tend to walk away in a gentle, almost imperceptible way. Instead of fighting it, accepting this move can be liberating, both for the Pisces and for you. This also involves respecting the emotional rhythm of the Pisces. They cannot be forced to open up or reconnect immediately. By respecting the cycles of distancing and approaching, you create a safe space for both to evolve in a healthy way. The real strength, therefore, is not in resisting the flow, but in learning to swim with it. While separation from a Pisces can be painful, it also provides an opportunity for personal growth and a deeper understanding of emotional dynamics. Recognizing the transient nature of relationships and accepting what the universe brings to you can be a lesson in wisdom. Remember, in the world of Pisces, nothing really ends. Everything is transformed, and love always finds a new way to manifest itself.